Okay, we're going to explore some more brush settings, how we can use some strokes and alphas. For that we do need some more detail again, so I'm going to add subdivision levels, Control D, Control D, Control D. Now we're at 800,000. Let's add one more. So 3.3 million should be plenty for this. And as we've seen with this kind of poly count, we can now make kind of very high fidelity strokes here. In this kind of free hand sculpting fashion, and that's just because we have this default stroke, which is called the dots enabled. It's very similar to the freehand, basically freehand sculpting. We also have something here called drag rectangular. This will be very different. Let me just undo those. The drag rectangular lets me drag out that stroke. Maybe that's not so apparent. Let me increase the C intensity. I'll drag out that brush stroke on the surface. So immediately it looks kind of, why would you ever want to do that? Well, it gets very interesting when you combine this with some alphas. So let's say just to get an idea of how this works, like all these alphas are just black and white images which mask off portions of the brush. So if I select this alpha, you will see that the stroke or the displacement will obviously be dictated by the shape of this image. So what you're looking at over here in the end is not an actual texture. These are individual polygons being displaced. All these vertices contribute to make this actual geometrical shape. We're just using a texture applied to the brush in order to achieve that. And this also ties in with the C intensity. So if this set very low, we can do more subtle effects, or C sub we can carve in like that. It's a very high C intensity, get a very pronounced effect like that. Go back in time here. Let's see. All right. So, yep, so I can add patterns like this. A lot of interesting things we can achieve. Surface detail. Or stuff like skin pores, wrinkle patterns. Obviously you can make your own alphas, or you can download alphas off of alpha libraries online. You can find a bunch of pores and wrinkles and all sorts of things, but you can also achieve quite interesting effects just using these built-in alphas here. Let's try the alpha 8. Set this to C sub and turn the C intensity down a bit. Start dragging this onto the surface here, and you can see you can create kind of some sort of skin pores here. Maybe I can smooth those out a bit again, just by dragging those onto the surface. Let's try another. Let's try alpha 32. Lower the C sub. See if we can keep dragging these onto the surface here. Very aggressive pores there. Or we could try the spray stroke. So now I'm changing to another stroke option. This allows me to spray this pattern all across this surface like this. So let me turn the C intensity down quite a bit. And I can do this circular motion with my pen. So I can very quickly kind of fill out this mesh with this kind of detail. Make some pores. You see how very quickly we can break up this kind of perfect computer graphics look and have something that starts looking a bit more organic as we're breaking up these specular highlights. You see here the specular highlights are no longer that shiny, perfect mirror reflection. I'm just using the spray stroke, having this alpha applied, kind of a low C sub, C intensity. Go over the surface and just like that. Now I can combine this, of course, with different kinds of alphas, or I can go in now and just do my own little tweaking, just set this to something like a pointy little alpha, set it to C sub, and just do some experimentation here. See if I can add a little bit more C intensity. I'm going to use the hotkey now, just press U, lower. So I encourage you just to experiment with, have some fun with this. See if you can add a lot of polys and just try out some of these alphas applied to different brushes, or in this case only the standard brush. Which brings me to another point, is that there are a lot of, obviously sculpting brushes, we'll get used to more of these as we proceed, but a lot of these are just variations on the standard brush. So you would apply a certain stroke setting, maybe a certain alpha, maybe you would change the stroke settings here and symmetry settings and so forth, and once you have everything set to your preference, you would save out a custom brush. So that's how a lot of these custom brushes are created in the first place. So I think it's helpful in the beginning to kind of have an understanding how you can also tweak the standard brush a little bit. You also have more brush settings here under the brush menu. You can manually edit the curve, fall off, and so forth. So without spending time doing the actual sculpting here, you can very quickly see we're arriving at something that starts looking right away kind of more interesting without too much effort here. So let me not, I said I would not get carried away, so let's leave it at that. And all this information now, all this high fidelity information, like I said, it is geometrical data. What you're looking at is not like a normal map or a bump map, which would just fake this. These are actual polygons giving you this result, which is quite amazing because you can now do whatever you want with this model. So we will be looking at how we can now take all this information, and let's say you wanted this model to appear in a computer game, we would have to do a normal map or a bump map, or in a movie you would do a displacement map. Or if you wanted to 3D print it nowadays, like printers, 3D printers, or CNC milling machines, or whatever you want to do, that you can add gradually a lot more complexity, right? So eventually you will be able to print 3D prints of a very high fidelity. So what I'm getting at is just, it's a very, very powerful thing to have access to the original kind of sculpt data as geometrical information here. So currently all of this can only be really seen at this highest subdivision level of around 3 million polys. I can still go down in the level, so if I hit Shift D to toggle down, it seems like everything is kind of gradually disappearing. And I can make some tweaks now to this level if I wanted to, but let's see. So if I change the standard brush kind of back to default, the reason you would want to go to a lower subdivision level is to make larger changes. It's much easier for me to sculpt. And let me set this back to CAD and hold Alt. It's much easier for me to make these overall larger changes on the lower subdivision levels, because I have a modest amount of polys to move around. So everything's just a lot smoother to work with. So we really only need that highest level of fidelity at the highest subdivision level. But the beauty here, which you'll see in a second, when I now go press D again, all that information is still there. So we should see that it's just been displaced a bit according to those little changes that I just did. So I can kind of work between these levels. I want to keep tweaking a bit at this level. Let's just exaggerate it very much. Do something like that. And then go back up, press D. See, the pores should be there. So that's the first quick look at just changing the stroke settings and playing around with some alphas. So that's what I encourage you to do now, is just subdivide this demo head or some other kind of just demo scene and just have a bit of fun with these alphas.